Hello there, my dear, and welcome to another episode of our coaching corner here on YouTube. If you don't know me super well, my name is Sabrina Militello. I am a coach and founder of Empower Her Coaching, and I bring to you a space every single week where we can connect on the things that really matter in terms of you going out there to build the big, beautiful life that you can't stop thinking about. I am not the coach who's gonna listen to your excuses or make space for your complaint. I'm the coach that's gonna empower you to take the power back in your life, to fully acknowledge where it is that you're the limit, right? And I truly, I believe this to be true to the depths of my soul, because this is the life that I've lived. This is what I've been able to realize and overcome in my own journey of growth. I was a big old mess for many, many years. I was a big mess. My life was a big mess. And I kept creating a big mess until I found it within myself to take the responsibility for the way that my life was going and fully embrace everything that it was going to take for me to turn the corner, write a new page, write a new chapter, and my life today looks completely different. So everything that I say to you, I don't get a lot of pushback when it comes to how forthcoming I am and forthright I am, because I think it's an expectation at this point. I've been doing this, sharing my journey, sharing my learnings, sharing my teachings and my insights and perspective for so long that it's kind of, you know what to expect. But one of the things that I want you to know is that anything that I say, it never comes from a place of judgment. It never comes from a place of telling you to just figure it out in a very dismissive kind of way. It comes from a deep understanding from my own process, as well as it's over 2,000 hours at this point of coaching women one-on-one through their journeys of transformation. The deep understanding that comes from that is that you are wildly capable, and the biggest limit in your life is yourself. Is the management of your mind, and it's the management of your energy. So we're going to dive into this topic today because this is going to be really good. Like I said, I've been getting better about having notes. I've always prepared for our conversations, but sometimes I just riff off the cuff and then I go on tangents and and we end up somewhere else. So I wanted to make sure that these conversations moving forward are very practical and tactical and just in this lane of what we're talking about. So I've got some notes here. So if you see me looking over here, this is why. But the conversation today is that you are not who you think you are, and that's the problem. And I'll explain. So our self-concept, our self-perception, who we view ourselves to be, is the ceiling of our capability. Have you ever considered that for yourself? I know when I was in a phase of my life where things were not going well, I can look back on it right now when I was clinically obese. I was nursing an eating disorder that I had in secret. I had suicide ideation. It was, like I said, it was a big old mess. And I look back at that version of myself now, and I understand fully that my life looked that way because I believed that that's what I was worthy of. That was as good as it was going to get. And it's understanding that the image you hold of yourself sets a really hard limit on what you allow yourself to do, what you allow yourself to be, what you allow yourself to have, the quality of life you allow yourself to experience. The image you hold of yourself is the hard limit of all of that. And that is regardless of how capable you actually are. It's regardless of how powerful you actually are, how skilled you actually are, how worthy you actually are. Your self-image will override the truth every single time. And so this conversation is vitally important because I need you to understand, and you need you to understand, more importantly, that you are not who you've always thought you are. You're not. But that's part of your problem, is because you're not attaching to that. You're not seeing the real truth of that. So let's get into it. I've said that your self-concept is not who you are, right? So what does that actually mean? What am I actually saying? Your self-concept is not who you are. What? I get very passionate and in my feels about this topic because I see so many women being stalled out of what they want most for their lives because of this exact thing. Your self-concept is not who you are. It's who you decided you were based on things that happened to you in your past, based on a bunch of evidence that you collected. And if you're in this place right now, you can probably recognize that self-image that you have is based on a bunch of evidence that you've collected up until right now. All the ways in which they've treated you, the things they've said about you, the things that happened to you, the way in which they looked at you, what they that side eye they gave you, or they dismissed you, they dismissed an idea, maybe you failed at an endeavor and you integrated that into meaning something about yourself and your value. If you're honest with yourself, I bet you can see the truth of that your self-image is not who you are, it's who you've decided that you are based on all that evidence from the past. But here's the thing. You cannot create something different for your future if you're still working on outdated knowledge from the past. The two things do not work hand in hand. So most of those things, if you look back at all of that evidence you've collected, they're from when you were younger, right? They're from a time when you were too innocent, maybe, to question it. Maybe it came from caregivers or people that you trusted with your survival, intrinsically or extrinsically as a child. That's what you're doing with adults, right? You trust them with your own survival. So maybe those things were formulated when you were too young and too innocent to question it. But that's not where you are today, correct? Today, you're old enough, you're experienced enough, you're conscious enough to look back at all that evidence, all that proof, and start to question it, start to pick it apart. There was a moment in my life where that was front and center for me, where I had to make a conscious decision. It was like a legit fork in the road moment, that I could continue believing all those stories about myself and staying in that sad story and replaying that sad story, or I could choose to question the validity of that stuff. I could choose to no longer believe that stuff. I could choose that those stories were no longer going to be on repeat in my mind. And that fork in the road represented what my future was going to look like. I want to be really clear about that. Because if we continue working on that outdated messaging, all that proof that you gathered when you were too young, too naive, too innocent to question, that's going to give you a life that is very different from the one I think, if you're honest, you truly want. Whereas if you have the courage and the capacity, the will to question it, to rewrite, to reframe, to heal from, the life that you can carve out for yourself is something that's truly of your own making. When you're conscious, when you're grown, when you were skilled and aware enough to choose for yourself. So that's the game that's at play. And I often talk about what's at stake for you. It's something that, I throw that question out a lot in my social media channels, in my one-on-one conversations with my clients, with my friends, with my husband. They truly appreciate that. But I often ask, what's at stake? Like, you have to have skin in the game is a common way of talking about this, in order to really be willing to put yourself through what it's going to take for you to carve out this new future. Because yes, it's going to take work. It's going to take intentional work. And I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that sometimes it's not going to suck. Like, sometimes it's going to suck. But you have to be willing to experience the emotion in order to move through it, so that you're no longer limited by those past beliefs about who you are. So I'd love for you to do a little exercise. You can pause this or do this after we finished, but write down on a piece of paper some of the stories or some of the evidence, some of the proof that you've gathered, and see if you can pinpoint when you created that story, when that proof got filed away. See if you can pinpoint the timelines for yourself. I think that could be really helpful to start to see just how outdated this stuff is. So press pause, go ahead and do that exercise, and then we'll get back to it when you come back. Okay, so we're back. Hopefully you did that exercise and you're having a bit of a brain bleed right now of oh my gosh, I've been holding on to this stuff for 30, 40 years. That's outdated. There's a story that's running the show of your psyche right now, of your mindset, that was formulated 30 years ago. You're not the same person you were 30 years ago. You don't have the same skills. You don't have the same level of experience. You don't have the same knowledge base. You don't have the same friends. You're not in the same environment. You're a different person than you were 30 years ago. So that proof and those stories must be outdated. I really encourage you to argue with me on that, right? And again, it's a willingness conversation. So the thing that is important that you acknowledge or that you understand is that when I was talking about your self-image and your self-perception being that hard limit, that ceiling, every time you overthink, every time you spiral in a decision, every time you pull back, every time you isolate, every time you undercharge, every time you say yes when you really wanted to say no, that is your self-concept at play. That is your self-image exerting its will. And what I mean by that is that your self-image is not broken necessarily. Stick with me for a second. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do, which is to have you be consistent with who you believe yourself to be. The actions that you take have to be consistent with who you believe yourself to be. So every time you're at the brink of a breakthrough, you're about to charge what you're worth, you're about to ask for that promotion, you're about to ask for that raise, you're about to set that boundary, you're about to leave that relationship, you're about to make that decision, and then you pull back. It's not because you're not courageous enough or you're not worthy of it or you're incapable of the task. It's because how you view yourself is working hard to keep your actions consistent with who you believe yourself to be. And you earning more money, you charging what you're worth, you setting that boundary, you leaving that relationship, you changing that environment, you skilling up, that is not consistent with the image that you have of yourself. Can you see what I'm saying? But the fact that you're on the brink, you're right there about to do those things, that is a that is is a cataclysmic point for you, because it means your self-image is right there on the brink of the level up that you need it to be at. So I really need you to start to see those moments and start to have your eyeballs wide open in those moments where you stutter, where you hesitate, where you pull back, where you start to be like, oh, I'm not sure. When you start to be like that and push beyond the action you would ordinarily take. I once said this to one of my clients, and I think her brain broke. We were in a coaching conversation, and we were talking specifically about her behaviors around food and how she was really struggling to break some of her emotional dependency on food, and how that was impacting how she was showing up at work and her energy and her patience and her confidence and all of those things. And I said to her, have you ever considered that this process of breaking this tie that you have to your emotions and your actions around food is as simple as when you're triggered, you do the opposite of what you would normally do? And she kind of looked at me for a second, and I could see her, like, her brain working. I could literally see her brain waves like going. And she was like, Sabrina, say that again. And I said, could it be as simple as doing the opposite of what you would normally do? And I invite you to consider that for yourself. When you notice that you're on the brink of the conversation, the ask, the action, when you would usually be like, oh, I'm going to talk myself out of it, I'm going to overthink myself into a spiral, I'm going to hesitate, I'm going to procrastinate, I'm going to push it off, I'm going to negotiate with myself, you actually do the opposite of all of that. You follow through on the action. Yes, you may have to do the thing and then run into the bathroom and vomit. Yes, you may have to do the thing and run into a corner and sit in a dark room for a second and hide. Yeah, you may have to do the thing and throw your phone across the room and sit, but do the thing. Because the only way in which your self-image gets up-leveled, where you take it to another place, is by taking action that is consistent with the version of yourself you want to become. Because remember, your self-image works to keep you consistent with who you believe yourself to be. It works in the other direction too. If you start taking action that is towards a certain level of self-image, then that level of self-image has no choice but to shift. Can you see how simply powerful this can be for you? It takes work and it takes intention. It takes doing things scared and doing things before you think you're ready. But it's incredibly simple to make these shifts and adjustments that will profoundly change your life. Because guess who you're with more than anybody else in the world for the entirety of your existence? Yourself. So that relationship needs to be one that is empowering and pleasant and inspiring and purposeful and intentional and loving. And that's a novel concept, right? We often think of self-love and self-care as taking bubble baths and going for massages and all of those things. But true self-love, true self-care, true self-reverence, which is the level that I like to take it to, is how you're speaking to yourself, how you're relating to yourself, how you be with yourself every day, every minute. And it's not perfect. I still work on, the chick that lives inside my head, her name is Patrice. We have somewhat of a tumultuous relationship. It's better than it ever has been. She only comes out with her nonsense every now and again, as opposed to every single waking moment. So it's not as if she's gone away. My inner critic has left the building, but her volume is quiet until she has those really loud days every now and again. The tone of what she says is a little more compassionate. She doesn't show up quite as often, quite as obnoxiously. And that's the goal, right? It's not that it's perfect, it's that it's better, and it's guiding you towards a version of yourself and a version of your life that is actually the one that you want, right? So the thing that I want you to take away is that the ceiling to your capacity is not out there. It's not based on how much skill you have. It's not based on how much knowledge you have. It's not based on who you know, how much money you have in the bank, the kind of clothes you wear, what job you have, the title that you hold. All of those things can add to your life, sure. But the ceiling to your self-concept and so your experience of your life is in here. It's right here. And the thing that I find to be true, again, going through the work that I've done for myself, as well as being in a position now where I not only coach high-performing, high-achieving women, but I'm also leading teams, high-performing, high-achieving teams, and building programming for those teams in a multi-million-dollar organization. Like, I'm with humans a lot and creating things to help humans reach their full capacity a lot. And what I know to be true is that the women who break through, who are able to up-level their self-image, up-level their identity, step into a new era and space and season and version of themselves, are not the ones that are most talented. They're the ones who are most willing to do that identity work. They're the ones that are most willing to go through the effort and the intentional action necessary to raise their self-perception. That's the difference maker. So let me give you something to take away from this, something that will help you understand what rewiring your self-perception looks like in practice, all right? It's not about affirmations. It's not about vision boards. It's not about, those external things that we often imagine is what it takes. Like, those things can help, of course. I'm an advocate for affirmations and declarations and vision boards and writing a vision and all of those things, setting goals, and I'm a big advocate for all of that. But that's not the rewiring in practice. Those things can support the rewiring that you're trying to do. But what rewiring actually looks like is the internal shift that is going to be the thing that changes what you're able to claim for yourself. Let me say that again. It's the internal shift that will change what you're willing to claim for yourself. So I've got another exercise for you. What needs to change in here for you to fully claim everything that you want your life to be? What do you need to stop doing? What do you need to start doing? And what do you need to keep doing, but maybe double down on? Because if you're here, you're listening to this kind of content, you haven't run away after I said that I'm going to push you and challenge you. You're already doing stuff that is working. You're already doing stuff that is necessary for the version of yourself that you want to be. So acknowledge that, right? Celebrate yourself for that. What is working that you're going to keep doing and maybe even double down on? But then we need to acknowledge what we need to stop doing, what we need to start doing. So when you think about the internal shift that needs to happen in order for you to be willing to claim everything that you were created for, what are the answers to those three questions? Because again, the thing that I really want you to take away from this conversation is that the ceiling to your ability, the hard limit to your capacity, is not anything that's outside of you. It's here. And you have to be, listen to me when I say that, you have to be willing to do the work necessary to shift and up-level and step into a new perception of the woman that you are. I hope this served you today. I'm going to put a link in the captions here, which is the application to step into my one-on-one coaching space. I lead a program called The Inevitable Woman. It's a 12-week coaching experience, just you and me. I read every single application personally. So go ahead, take a look at that. And if that's something that you think could serve where you're at in your life right now, for us to work deeply on this identity stuff, so you can pull out of those old stories, all of that old proof and outdated evidence, and truly step into everything that you were meant for, then I would be honored to walk beside you in that journey. So feel free to apply at that link below. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Consider sharing it to with somebody. I would love it if you would subscribe to the channel. That would fill me with so much joy. And let me know what your takeaways were. If you want to share with me what you got out of those 2 exercises that I gave you, feel free. You can email me, you can message me. I put my social media handles in here as well, so you can DM me and we can have a conversation, because I am here to fully speak and breathe life into you and belief into you for everything that you are capable of. All right? That's my promise to you. Until next time, take care.